They said she never felt emotion, but her eyes told me I was different. First contact. The war room fell silent as the door slid open. Commander Devin Reed looked up from the holographic battle maps that floated in the air, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the assembled officers. Every human in the room straightened their posture as General Nyxara entered. She wasn't what Devin had expected. The Solarian general moved with fluid grace, her tall, slender frame seeming to glide rather than walk. Her skin was the color of burnished copper with subtle iridescent patterns that shifted as she moved. Her eyes were what caught him off guard, large, almond-shaped, and a startling shade of amber that seemed to glow from within. "Commander Reed," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality despite its formality. "You are the one Admiral Thornton mentioned." Devin nodded, trying to maintain his composure. "That's me, though I didn't realize I was topic of conversation in Solarian High Command." The other officers exchanged nervous glances. The alliance between humans and Solarians was barely 2 months old, formed out of desperate necessity rather than trust. The Voidborn Armada had already destroyed 3 colony worlds, and neither species could stand against them alone. "Your tactical approach during the Proxima defense was unexpected," Nyxara said, her head tilting slightly as she studied him. The translucent membranes that protected her eyes flickered briefly. "Our analysts believed your fleet would retreat. Instead, you executed a counteroffensive that confused our projections." "We're good at being unpredictable," Devin replied with a slight smile. "It's a human specialty." The general's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. "Indeed, the Solarian High Command believes this. Unpredictability might be valuable against the Voidborn. Their battle algorithms are designed to counter logical progression of warfare." Admiral Jacobs cleared his throat. "General Nyxara will be joining our strategic command for the upcoming operation. Her expertise in Voidborn technology will be invaluable." Devin studied the alien carefully. Solarians were known for their logical approach to everything. Their society functioned with mechanical precision, their military strategies calculated to mathematical perfection. They were also known for their emotional detachment. Some humans claimed they didn't feel emotion at all. "The Voidborn fleet has changed course," Nyxara continued, stepping toward the holographic display. With a gesture of her 6-fingered hand, the star map expanded, revealing the movement of enemy ships. "They appear to be converging on the Arcturus system." "Arcturus?" Lieutenant Chen frowned. "There's nothing there except mining outposts." "And the quantum communications relay," Devin realized, his mind racing. "If they take that out, half our colonies will be cut off from real-time communications." Nyxara's eyes locked onto his. "Precisely. You see the strategic value immediately. This suggests why Admiral Thornton recommended you." The room began to buzz with activity as officers calculated defensive positions and resource allocations. Throughout it all, Devin found himself distracted by the Solarian general's presence. There was something about her that didn't fit the cold, emotionless stereotype he'd been taught to expect. As the meeting progressed, Nyxara dissected every strategy with ruthless efficiency, pointing out flaws that human tacticians had missed. Her analytical mind worked at a speed that left even the most experienced officers struggling to keep up. "Your plan relies too heavily on the assumption that Voidborn ships will maintain formation," she said, addressing Admiral Jacobs directly. "Their hive mind allows them to fragment and regroup with greater flexibility than your simulations account for." "What would you suggest, General?" Devin asked, genuinely curious. Nyxara's eyes shifted to him. "A more adaptive approach. We must create a response matrix that can adjust to their movements in real time rather than committing to a single strategy." "You mean improvise," Devin translated with a slight grin. For a moment, he thought he saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. If that term is more comfortable for you, Commander Reed, then yes, improvise. As the meeting concluded, officers filed out with new assignments and a renewed sense of urgency. Devon gathered his data tablets, preparing to return to his quarters to work through the night on the new battle plans. Commander Reed, Nyxara's voice stopped him at the door. A moment of your time. He turned, surprised to find her standing closer than he expected. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns on her skin more clearly. They weren't random, but seemed to form complex geometric designs that subtly pulsed with her breathing. General, you disagree with several aspects of the strategy we outlined, she stated. It wasn't a question. Devon hesitated. I have some concerns, yes. Yet you did not voice them. This alliance is new. I didn't want to undermine Admiral Jacobs in front of the entire command staff. Nyxara studied him, her amber eyes unblinking. Fascinating. You prioritize social hierarchy over tactical optimization. Sometimes the best strategy isn't just about positions on a map, Devon replied. It's about the people implementing those strategies. People are variables, she said, her tone neutral. Complex and often unpredictable, but variables nonetheless. Is that how Solarians see everything? Just variables in an equation? It is how I was trained to see things, she answered, and for just a moment Devon thought he detected something else in her voice, a hint of, what? Uncertainty, regret. And is that how you actually see things? He pressed. Nyxara's eyes widened slightly, the membranes flickering rapidly. Then her expression returned to its careful neutrality. An interesting question, Commander. I look forward to our collaboration. As she turned to leave, Devon called after her. They say Solarians don't feel emotions. Is that true? She paused at the door, her back to him. What they say about Solarians is not always accurate, Commander Reed. Perhaps you should form your own conclusions. With that, she was gone, leaving Devon alone in the war room with the glowing star maps, and a growing suspicion that General Nyxara was not at all what she appeared to be. In the days that followed, the human Solarian Joint Command prepared for what might be their most crucial battle yet. And as Devon worked alongside the enigmatic General Nyxara, he couldn't shake the feeling that beneath her composed exterior lay depths that no human had ever been permitted to see. The fate of two species would depend on their ability to work together. But first, they would need to understand each other, a task that might prove more challenging than defeating the Voidborn themselves. Strategic tensions. Devon's quarters felt claustrophobic despite the panoramic view of space through the reinforced viewport. The stars glittered coldly against the void, reminding him of the vastness they were fighting to protect. He rubbed his tired eyes and focused again on the tactical simulations running on his holographic display. Computer, run simulation variant 14B again, he commanded, watching as tiny ships maneuvered through a dance of destruction. The door chimed, interrupting his concentration. Enter, he called, not looking up from the display. General Nyxara stepped inside, her copper skin catching the blue light of the hologram. Commander Reed, you did not attend the briefing this morning. Devon gestured toward the simulation. I've been working on alternatives to the main battle plan. Something didn't feel right about our approach. Nyxara moved closer, her amber eyes tracking the movement of the simulated ships. You mean something didn't feel right to you emotionally? Call it intuition, Devon replied, standing to face her. Sometimes humans just know things without being able to explain the logical process. The Solarian general's head tilted slightly. Intuition, an interesting concept. On my world, such thinking would be considered flawed. And yet here you are seeking my input, Devon observed. The corner of Nyxara's mouth twitched again, that same almost smile he'd noticed in their first meeting. Perhaps the Solarian way is not always optimal when facing an enemy like the Voidborn. She gestured toward his simulation. Show me what you've discovered. For the next hour, they dissected Devon's alternative strategy. To his surprise, Nyxara didn't dismiss his intuitive leaps but instead built upon them with her own analytical precision. Together, they crafted something neither would have created alone. The Voidborn adapt quickly to established patterns, Devon explained, highlighting a section of the battle map. But they struggle with contradictions, moves that make no strategic sense until viewed from a different perspective. Like sacrificing a valuable piece in your human game of chess, Nyxara suggested. Devon looked up surprised. You know chess. I have studied many human games. They reveal much about your species' thinking. And what conclusions have you drawn? Devon asked, genuinely curious. Nyxara's expression remained neutral, but her eyes seemed to brighten. That humans find unusual value in what appears to be chaos. You embrace unpredictability as a strength rather than a weakness. Sometimes chaos is exactly what you need, Devon said with a half-smile. Structure and order are predictable. The Voidborn can calculate those variables. Whereas human unpredictability introduces an element they cannot quantify, Nyxara finished. Fascinating. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued working. Devon found himself stealing glances at the Solarian general, noticing how the patterns on her skin seemed to pulse more rapidly when she was deep in thought. You're starring, Commander, she said without looking up from the display. Devon felt heat rise to his face. Sorry, I'm just not used to working with Solarians. Is my presence uncomfortable for you? Not uncomfortable, he clarified. Intriguing, you're not what I expected. Nyxara finally looked up, her amber eyes meeting his. What did you expect, Commander Reed? Someone colder, more detached. The briefings about Solarians emphasized your species' commitment to logic above all else. And you find me insufficiently logical. There was a hint of something in her voice, amusement perhaps. Actually, I find you surprisingly human, Devon admitted. Not in appearance, obviously, but in your thinking. There are moments when I forget we're from different worlds. The Solarian's expression shifted subtly. The High Command would consider that an insult. And you, do you consider it an insult? Nyxara didn't answer immediately. She turned back to the holographic display, her long fingers manipulating the projection with precise movements. What I consider does not matter. My purpose here is to ensure victory against the Voidborn. That's not an answer, Devon pressed. No, she agreed, it is not. Before he could pursue the matter further, the ship's alert system blared to life. Red warning lights pulsed throughout the room as Admiral Jacob's voice came over the intercom. All command staff to the bridge. Voidborn scouts have been detected in the Arcturus system. Repeat, Voidborn scouts in Arcturus. This is not a drill. Devon and Nyxara exchanged a look. They're earlier than we predicted, he said, already moving toward the door. Then we must be adaptable, she replied, falling into step beside him. Like humans. The corridors of the flagship were alive with activity as crew members rushed to battle stations. As they entered the bridge, the main view screen displayed a tactical overview of the Arcturus system. Small red indicators represented the Voidborn scout ships moving in a strange, spiraling pattern around the quantum relay station. Report, Devon demanded as he took his position. Lieutenant Rivera glanced up from her console. 3 Voidborn scout vessels, approximately 20 minutes from weapons range of the relay. They're scanning everything. Admiral Jacobs turned to Nyxara. General, what's your assessment? Is this the beginning of their main assault? The Solarian studied the display, her eyes narrowing. No, this is reconnaissance. The pattern suggests they are mapping defenses, establishing a baseline for their tactical algorithms. So they're preparing for the real attack, Devon concluded, which means we have an opportunity. Nyxara looked at him curiously. What are you suggesting, Commander? We feed them false information, Devon explained, moving to the tactical display. Show them exactly what we want them to see. Make them think our defensive capabilities are configured one way, when in reality, we will be positioned differently, Nyxara finished, her eyes brightening with understanding. Deceptive, unpredictable. Exactly. Very human of you, General, Devon said with a grin. For the first time since they'd met, Nyxara smiled. A small, controlled expression, but unmistakably a smile. Perhaps there is value in thinking like a human when facing an enemy that expects logic. Admiral Jacobs cleared his throat. I need a detailed plan, not philosophical discussions. How do we implement this strategy? For the next several hours, Devon and Nyxara worked side by side, crafting a deception that would hopefully give them the edge when the main Voidborn fleet arrived. Their different approaches, his intuitive leaps paired with her analytical precision, created something neither of their species would have developed alone. As the plan took shape, Devon couldn't help noticing how seamlessly they had begun to work together. The initial distance between them had narrowed, replaced by a growing mutual respect. Late into the ship's night cycle, as most of the command staff had retired to rest before the coming battle, Devon and Nyxara remained on the bridge, refining the final details. You should rest, Commander, Nyxara said, nodding his third cup of coffee. Humans require sleep for optimal function. So do Solarians, from what I've heard, he countered. Our requirements are different. I can maintain full operational capacity for 72 of your hours before requiring regeneration. Devon shook his head with a tired smile. Must be nice. My brain turns to mush after about 20. Nyxara observed him with that intense amber gaze. Yet you continue to work beyond your optimal period. Why? Because if we get this wrong, a lot of people die, he said simply, both human and Solarian. Your concern extends to my species as well. Of course, Devon replied, surprised by the question. We're allies now. Your people matter just as much as mine. Something shifted in Nyxara's expression, a subtle softening around her eyes. That sentiment is not common among your kind in my experience. Maybe you haven't met the right humans, Devon suggested. The Solarian general studied him for a long moment. Perhaps I have not, she agreed quietly, until now. In that moment, as their eyes met across the tactical display, Devon felt something change between them, a bridge forming across the vast gulf that separated their worlds. Whatever Solarians claimed about their emotional capacity, he was becoming increasingly certain that General Nyxara felt far more than she revealed. And as the countdown to battle continued, he found himself hoping they would have time to explore what that might mean for both of them, and for the future of their species. I'll continue with Part 3 of your story. Part 3, The Coffee Experiment. The morning before the expected Voidborn attack, Devon found himself in the ship's mess hall, staring blearily at his third cup of coffee. Sleep had eluded him, his mind racing with possible scenarios and counter-strategies. The tactical simulations showed promising results, but against an enemy as adaptive as the Voidborn, simulations could only predict so much. Commander Reed, you appear fatigued. Devon looked up to find General Nyxara standing beside his table, observing him with those penetrating amber eyes. Without waiting for an invitation, she slid into the seat across from him. Good morning to you too, General, he said, trying to hide his exhaustion with a smile. Didn't expect to see you here. I thought Solarians had their own nutrition protocols. We do, she confirmed, eyeing his coffee with evident curiosity. However, I find it beneficial to observe human social rituals. Your species forms many connections during consumption periods. Devon couldn't help but chuckle. You mean we talk while we eat? Pretty basic stuff. Not to Solarians. Our meal times are solitary, efficient. No conversation, no bonding. The way she said the word suggested it was a foreign concept. "Sounds lonely," Devon remarked, taking another sip of his coffee. Nyxara's head tilted slightly. Loneliness is an emotional response to isolation. Solarians experience solitude as neutral. And yet here you are, joining me for breakfast. As I said, research. Devon pushed his coffee cup toward her. Want to research this while you're at it? Human fuel keeps us going when sleep isn't an option. Nyxara regarded the steaming liquid with skepticism. Your caffeine beverage. I have read reports about its effects on human physiology. Nothing beats first-hand experience, Devon challenged with a raised eyebrow. To his surprise, she reached for the cup. A valid point, Commander. Before he could warn her about the temperature, Nyxara took a substantial sip. Her reaction was immediate and profound. Her eyes widened dramatically. The patterns on her skin pulsed rapidly, and she set the cup down with such force that coffee sloshed over the rim. "General, are you all right?" Devon asked, suddenly concerned. Nyxara's expression cycled through several subtle shifts before settling into something he couldn't quite read. "The sensation is intense." "I should have warned you it was hot," he apologized. "It was not the temperature," she said, her voice slightly different than before, less modulated, more natural. "The chemical compounds in your beverage interact, unusually, with Solarian physiology." Devon leaned forward, intrigued. Good unusual or bad unusual? "Difficult to categorize," she admitted, and then did something that shocked him completely. She reached for the cup again and took another, more careful sip. "It stimulates neural pathways that are typically suppressed in my species," she explained after a moment. "Interesting." The mess hall was beginning to fill with morning shift personnel, many of whom cast curious glances at the unusual sight of a human commander and Solarian general sharing coffee. "Suppressed neural pathways," Devon repeated. "You mean emotions?" Nyxara's eyes met his, and there was a new quality to them, a brightness, an alertness that hadn't been there before. "Our emotional capacity is not absent, Commander, merely regulated." "Regulated by choice or by design?" he pressed, sensing a rare opportunity for honesty. The Solarian's fingers traced patterns on the table, mirroring the geometric designs on her skin. "Both. Our society values logical precision. Emotions are seen as inefficient. Those who rise to positions of authority learn to suppress them most effectively." "That sounds exhausting," Devon said softly. "It is our way," she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "And what about you, Nyxara?" he asked, deliberately using her name without her rank. "Do you ever get tired of suppressing who you are?" The question hung between them, dangerous and intimate. For a moment, Devon thought he'd crossed a line, but then something remarkable happened. Nyxara smiled, not the slight twitch he'd seen before, but a genuine smile that transformed her face. "Your coffee appears to have compromised my regulatory functions, Commander Reed," she said, a hint of warmth in her voice. Devon grinned. "Devon, if we're going to have coffee together and talk about feelings, you might as well use my name." "Devon," she repeated, as if testing the sound. "A pleasant phonetic combination. You know, for someone who supposedly doesn't feel emotions, you've got quite a way with compliments," he teased. Nyxara took another sip of coffee, her amber eyes never leaving his. "Perhaps there is much about Solarians that humans do not understand." "I'm beginning to see that," Devon agreed. Their moment of connection was interrupted by Lieutenant Rivera, who approached their table with evident urgency. "Commander, General, Admiral Jacobs has called an emergency briefing. Long-range sensors have detected the Voidborn main fleet. They're accelerating toward the relay faster than projected." Devon and Nyxara exchanged a look of mutual understanding. Their time for coffee and conversation was over. The real test was about to begin. "We'll be right there," Devon assured Rivera, who nodded and hurried away. As they stood to leave, Nyxara hesitated. "This conversation has been educational, Devon. We should do it again sometime," he suggested, "assuming we survive the next few days." "A compelling incentive to ensure our strategy succeeds," she replied. And there it was again, that hint of humor, of personality beneath the carefully controlled exterior. They walked together to the bridge, shoulder to shoulder, human and Solarian united by a common purpose and a growing understanding that transcended their biological differences. The bridge was a hive of activity as they entered. Admiral Jacob stood before the main viewscreen, his weathered face grim as he studied the incoming data. "Gentlemen, ladies," he acknowledged as Devon and Nyxara took their positions. "The Voidborn are moving faster than anticipated. Their vanguard will reach the relay in approximately 6 hours. Our forces are in position according to the deception strategy," Lieutenant Rivera reported. "The false defensive grid is active and broadcasting on all frequencies." "Good," Devon said, reviewing the tactical display. "What about our actual fleet positions?" "All ships are maintaining communication silence and holding at the designated coordinates," Rivera confirmed. "As far as the Voidborn can tell, we're deployed exactly where we want them to think we are." Nyxara studied the incoming sensor data with intense focus. "The configuration of their fleet is unusual. They appear to have adapted their formation since our last encounter." "Can they detect our trap?" Admiral Jacobs asked, concern evident in his voice. "Impossible to determine with certainty," the Solarian general admitted. "However, their current approach vector suggests they are responding to our false defensive positioning as anticipated." Devon felt a flicker of pride at their joint strategy. "Then the plan is working. They think they know exactly where to hit us, but they're flying straight into our crossfire." "Overconfidence is dangerous, Commander," Nyxara cautioned, though her tone lacked its usual edge of formality. "The Voidborn are highly adaptive. We must be prepared to adjust our strategy if they detect the deception." "That's why we have you," Devon replied with a confident smile. "Between your analytical precision and our human unpredictability, we've got this." Admiral Jacobs cleared his throat. "Let's hope your optimism is warranted, Commander. All personnel, prepare for battle stations in 4 hours. I want every system checked and double-checked." As the bridge crew dispersed to their duties, Devon noticed Nyxara watching him with an unreadable expression. "What is it?" he asked quietly, moving closer to her. "Your confidence," she said, her voice equally low. "Is it genuine or a show for the crew?" "A bit of both," he admitted. "Humans need to believe they can win, even against impossible odds. Sometimes hope is as powerful a weapon as any battleship." Nyxara considered this, an emotional approach to warfare. "But effective," he pointed out. "Yes," she agreed, surprising him. "I am beginning to see the value in your human methods, Devon Reed. Perhaps there is wisdom in embracing both logic and feeling." The way she said that last word, almost as if testing it on her tongue, made Devon wonder just how deeply their coffee conversation had affected her. Was it possible that a simple human beverage had begun to crack the facade of Solarian emotional control? Before he could pursue that thought, the ship's tactical alert sounded. Lieutenant Rivera's voice came over the intercom, tense but controlled. "Commander Reed, General Nyxara were detecting unusual energy signatures from the Voidborn fleet. They're accelerating again. New estimated contact time, 2 hours." Their eyes met in shared understanding. The time for conversation was over. The battle that could determine the fate of both their species was about to begin. "Ready for this?" Devon asked quietly. Nyxara's amber eyes gleamed with newfound intensity. "Together, Commander, I believe we are." Battle of the Dreadnought. The bridge of the UES horizon hummed with tense energy as officers moved with practiced efficiency between stations. Tactical displays showed the approaching Voidborn fleet, a writhing mass of biomechanical ships that seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. At the center of their formation loomed their flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything around it. Devon studied the enemy formation, searching for any sign that they had detected the trap. So far, the Voidborn appeared to be following exactly the path they had predicted, moving steadily toward the false defensive line while the combined human-Solarian fleet waited in concealed positions. 2 minutes until they reached the engagement zone, Lieutenant Rivera announced, her voice steady despite the pressure. Admiral Jacobs nodded grimly. All ships maintain positions. Wait for my signal. Beside Devon, Nyxara stood perfectly still, her amber eyes fixed on the tactical display. The patterns on her copper skin pulsed more rapidly than usual, the only outward sign of her heightened focus. After their coffee experiment that morning, Devon found himself more attuned to these subtle indicators of her internal state. "They've taken the bait," Devon whispered to her, "exactly as we planned." Nyxara's gaze flicked briefly to his. "Do not celebrate prematurely. The Voidborn will adapt quickly once they realize the deception." "That's why timing is everything," he reminded her. "We'll only get one chance at this." The massive Voidborn dreadnought moved into position, its escort vessels spreading out in a formation designed to counter the false defensive grid they believed they were facing. The trap was about to spring. "All ships prepare to engage," Admiral Jacobs commanded. "On my mark." The bridge fell silent as everyone held their breath, watching the enemy ships drift deeper into the kill zone. Now, across the system, the hidden human and Solarian vessels powered up simultaneously, dropping their stealth fields and bringing weapons systems online. The Voidborn fleet, caught completely by surprise, scrambled to reorganize as energy signatures bloomed all around them. "Direct hit on 3 escort vessels," Rivera reported as the first salvos struck home. "The dreadnought is raising shields." Devon leaned forward, watching intently as the battle unfolded. "They're adapting already. Look at their formation shift." True to his word, the Voidborn ships were reorganizing with uncanny speed, their hive-mind coordination allowing them to respond to the ambush far faster than any individual commander could manage. "As expected," Nyxara said calmly, "implement Phase 2. Admiral Jacobs nodded. "All vessels, execute Pattern Delta. Focus fire on the dreadnought's port shield generators." The human Solarian fleet moved in perfect synchronization, executing the complex maneuver they had rehearsed countless times in simulation. The smaller, more agile human vessels darted between the larger Solarian cruisers, creating a constantly shifting target pattern that confused the Voidborn targeting systems. For several minutes, the battle seemed to be going exactly according to plan. The combined fleet maintained tactical superiority, steadily wearing down the dreadnought's defenses while keeping the escort vessels at bay. Then everything changed. "Energy spike from the dreadnought," Rivera called out, alarm evident in her voice. "Massive power buildup in their central core." "That's not in any of our intelligence briefings," Devon said, turning to Nyxara. "Is this something you've seen before?" The Solarian general's expression tightened. "No, this is a new adaptation. They're reconfiguring their weapons array." Before anyone could respond, a brilliant purple-white beam lanced out from the dreadnought, cutting through space with terrifying precision. It struck one of the Solarian cruisers, slicing through its shields as if they weren't there. The cruiser's hull split apart in a silent explosion, debris scattering across the battlefield. "Valiant is down," Rivera reported grimly. "No survivors detected." Admiral Jacobs slammed his fist on the console. "How the hell did they do that? Nothing we have can penetrate Solarian shields that efficiently." "They've adapted to our technology," Nyxara said, her voice tight. They've incorporated elements of Solarian defensive systems they encountered in previous engagements. Devon watched as the dreadnought's weapon began to recharge, its massive form turning slowly to target another cruiser. We need to change tactics, now. The original plan is compromised, Nyxara agreed. We must improvise. Something in the way she said that last word, a callback to their earlier conversations, caught Devon's attention. He looked at her, and for an instant, saw something in her eyes that transcended their professional relationship. Trust. Admiral, Devon said urgently, we need to execute a dispersal pattern. Break up our formation completely, every ship for itself, no coordination, no discernible pattern. Jacob stared at him incredulously. That's suicide, Commander. Without coordinated shield coverage, we'll be picked apart. No, Nyxara interjected, understanding dawning in her expression. Commander Reed is correct. The Voidborn rely on identifying patterns to predict our movements. If there is no pattern, they can't anticipate what we'll do next, Devon finished. Complete chaos is our best defense right now. Admiral Jacobs hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with abandoning their carefully crafted battle plan. And after we disperse, what then? We improvise, Devon and Nyxara said simultaneously. Something in their united front must have convinced the Admiral. He gave a reluctant nod. All vessels, execute emergency dispersal pattern. Individual captains are authorized to engage at will. No coordinated movements, I repeat, no coordinated movements. The fleet scattered like startled fish, each ship veering off in seemingly random directions. The Voidborn dreadnought fired its devastating weapon again, but this time it struck empty space where a Solarian cruiser had been moments before. It's working, Devon said, watching as the Voidborn ship struggled to track targets that refused to follow predictable patterns. They can't lock onto anything. But neither can we mount an effective offensive, Rivera pointed out. We're just buying time. Nyxara's eyes had never left the tactical display. Perhaps time is all we need. Look at the dreadnought's energy signature. Devon studied the readings. The massive energy weapon was drawing enormous power from the ship's core with each firing sequence. They can't maintain that weapon indefinitely. It's draining their resources. Exactly, Nyxara said. And if they are attempting to track multiple unpredictable targets while maintaining that weapon system, they'll burn out, Devon realized. They're overexerting themselves trying to adapt to our non-pattern. For the next 30 minutes, the battle continued in apparent chaos. The human Solarian fleet darted about in random patterns, occasionally landing hits on the Voidborn vessels but primarily focused on survival. The dreadnought continued to fire its devastating weapon, but with decreasing frequency and accuracy. Dreadnought power levels dropping, Rivera reported. They're down to 60% capacity and falling. Now we need to press the advantage, Devon said. But we can't go back to coordinated movements. They'll adapt immediately. Nyxara was silent for a moment, her amber eyes distant as if working through complex calculations. Then she turned to Admiral Jacobs. I have a suggestion, Admiral, but it requires trusting Commander Reed's human unpredictability. Jacobs, who had been watching their dispersal strategy work with growing approval, nodded. I'm listening, General. Allow Commander Reed to direct the human vessels in an intuitive attack pattern, one not based on tactical algorithms, but on his human instinct, she explained. Meanwhile, I will direct the Solarian cruisers in a sequence based on pure mathematical precision. The contrast between these approaches will create a discord that the Voidborn cannot predict. Devon stared at her in amazement. This was not the strategy of a being who valued logic above all else. This was Nyxara embracing the very unpredictability she had once viewed with skepticism. You want us to deliberately mismatch our approaches? Admiral Jacobs asked, brow furrowed. Precisely, Nyxara confirmed. Logic and intuition together, a combination the Voidborn have never encountered. The Admiral looked between them, then gave a decisive nod. Make it happen. What followed was unlike any battle either species had ever executed. Under Devon's direction, the human vessels moved in fluid, almost artistic patterns, darting in for quick strikes before retreating again. Their movements followed no recognizable military strategy, guided instead by Devon's instinctive understanding of space and momentum. Simultaneously, Nyxara directed the Solarian cruisers in mathematically perfect formations, their movements a stark contrast to the human vessel's fluid dance. Together, they created a battlefield that defied prediction, half-ordered, half-chaotic. The Voidborn struggled to respond. Their hive mind, designed to identify and counter patterns, couldn't reconcile the contradictory approaches. The Dreadnought's massive weapon fired with decreasing accuracy, wasting precious energy on empty space while the combined fleet steadily wore down its defenses. Dreadnought shields at 30%, Rivera announced. They're failing. All vessels, Admiral Jacobs commanded, concentrate fire on the exposed weapon housing, everything you've got. In a breathtaking display of cooperation, the human and Solarian ships converged from all directions, weapons blazing. The Dreadnought's remaining escorts moved to intercept, but they were too few and too scattered to form an effective defensive line. Brilliant beams of energy struck the massive ship's vulnerable core, penetrating deep into its structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a series of explosions began to ripple across the Dreadnought's surface. They're trying to adapt, Nyxara observed, watching as the biomechanical ship attempted to heal its wounds. But the damage is too extensive. The bridge crew watched in tense silence as the Dreadnought's massive form began to break apart, secondary explosions cascading through its structure. With a final, silent eruption, the ship that had seemed invincible just hours before disintegrated into fragments. A cheer went up across the bridge, officers embracing each other in relief and triumph. Admiral Jacobs allowed himself a rare smile. The remaining Voidborn vessels are retreating. We've done it. Devon turned to Nyxara, expecting to see her usual composed expression. Instead, he found her watching him with open admiration, her amber eyes bright with an emotion no Solarian would admit to feeling. It seems, she said quietly, so only he could hear, that there is much value in unpredictability after all. And in working together, Devon added, resisting the urge to reach for her hand. Your logical precision combined with our intuitive chaos, they never stood a chance. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, human and Solarian, no longer divided by their differences, but united by what they had accomplished together. I believe, Nyxara said thoughtfully, that I would like more coffee, Devon read. There is much about human intuition I still wish to understand. Devon smiled, realizing that their victory today extended far beyond the battlefield. Something new had begun between their species, something that might change the course of the galaxy forever. It would be my pleasure, General, he replied. After all, we have a lot to celebrate.